The morning sunlight over Los Angeles always looked warm from the outside, but to Ida Johnson, it felt like a spotlight she didn't ask for. She stood behind the counter of Bloomin' Root, the tiny flower shop she had worked at since she was 16, carefully arranging ivory roses into a graduation bouquet she knew she would never receive. Her fingers moved delicately, but her heart was pounding hard enough to bruise her ribs. Today was supposed to be her day. Today she should have walked across the stage knowing her flight to Milan was already booked, her scholarship to the prestigious Rossi Institute, secured after years of sleepless nights and relentless work. Instead, she held a rejection email she had opened at dawn. 2 lines. "We regret to inform you." She didn't remember reading the rest. Just the silence afterward, so loud it swallowed the world. Ida blinked a few times to chase back tears, then pressed her palms to the counter. "You're fine," she whispered to herself. "Smile. Breathe. Pretend today is not the end of everything." But her chest tightened. She had no family, no savings, no safety net. That scholarship was the only door she had ever seen open for her, and someone had slammed it shut without explanation. By noon, she walked onto the outdoor campus quad of California Arts University, her graduation gown brushing the grass, her curls glowing under the sun. Joyful families roared around her, snapping photos, hugging their children. She moved through them like a ghost present, but unseen, unheard, uncelebrated. The MC announced that the donor of the school's International Design Scholarship would deliver a short address. "Please welcome Mr. Sean Kane, CEO of Kane Foundation." Applause erupted, but Ida froze mid-step. Sean Kane. She looked up toward the stage, and there he was, the man whose foundation had funded the very scholarship she lost, the man whose name was on the email that destroyed her dream. He stood tall against the backdrop of the university banner, white shirt, fitted navy suit that spoke of old money and generational privilege. He wasn't much older than the graduates. 30, maybe 31. His hair was brushed back effortlessly, his movements calm, his voice steady as he began speaking. "Education is the runway for those born without wings," he said, and the crowd swooned, moved by the softness in his voice. "It is our honor to help young talent fly." Ida's stomach twisted, anger pushing through every pore. Help young talent fly. She clenched her jaw. Her pulse roared in her ears. Minutes ago, she was merely broken. Now she was furious. Furious at him, at the hypocrisy, at the way he stood there applauded for generosity, while her dreams were ash. She didn't remember deciding to move her body, just propelled itself forward. Her voice sliced through the crowd before she could stop herself. Lies. Head snapped toward her. A hush fell across the lawn. Sean paused mid-sentence, his gaze tightening slightly before settling on the source of the disruption. Ida stood in the aisle, chest rising and falling, hands trembling. "You stand there talking about wings," she said, her voice steadier than she expected, "while your foundation revoked scholarships without warning. Mine was taken away 3 days ago. No explanation, no accountability, just gone." A ripple of whispers spread like wildfire. Sean's brows knit together, irritation or maybe confusion flickering behind his eyes. "Miss, you don't get to ask my name." She stepped forward again. "You don't get to pretend to care about us while your staff erases the futures you claim to protect." The air grew electric. Sean Kane rarely showed emotion in public. Tabloids called him the ice-blooded heir. But at that moment, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not guilt, but something darker, deeper, as if a dent had suddenly appeared in a perfect metal surface. "Please see me after the ceremony," he said quietly. "No," Ida answered. "See yourself. Because you clearly don't know the damage you cause." She turned and walked away, as hundreds of eyes followed her. And for the first time in his very controlled, perfectly managed life, Sean Kane stood speechless before a crowd. Ida didn't stay for her diploma. She ripped off her gown and stormed toward the parking structure, her thoughts racing, chest tightening with humiliation and loss. Rage had kept her upright on that stage, but now it softened into something too heavy to fight. She wiped her cheeks impatiently. "Stupid," she muttered. "I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have." Then she saw it. A sleek, midnight black Aston Martin parked near the exit. It practically glowed under the afternoon sun, the kind of car that cost more than everything she had ever owned combined. She recognized it instantly from magazines. Sean Kane's signature model. A bitter laugh slipped from her lips. "Perfect," she whispered. "Just perfect." Before logic could catch up with her, she picked up her keys. One long, thin edge gleamed sharply. Her hand shook, then steadied. "Just one line," she whispered. "One stupid line to feel like I'm not powerless." She pressed the metal to the flawless paint and dragged it all the way across the door. A long silver scar bloomed on the perfect black surface. The sound was soft, but the satisfaction was blinding. "Feel that," she said under her breath. A quiet click behind her made her freeze. The tinted window lowered, revealing Sean Kane sitting in the driver's seat watching her. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't yelling. He just looked at her with that maddening calm, his eyes glacial and unreadable. "Are you done?" he asked, voice low. Ida's breath halted. Heat flushed her cheeks, but she forced her chin up. "Maybe." Sean stepped out of the car, tall and composed, like nothing could touch him, even the fresh scratch running down his beloved Aston. He walked around the door, inspecting the damage with deliberate slowness. "That's new," he murmured, "and expensive." "Report me," Ida challenged. "Have me arrested. It won't fix your lies." Sean turned his gaze to her fully, and for a split second, the world narrowed to just two people standing too close, their anger crackling like static. "I don't report people," he said softly, "but I do like to understand them. I'm not a puzzle for you to solve." "Everything is a puzzle," he replied, "especially you." Her heart skipped annoyance, confusion, something else she refused to name. Before she could respond, a metallic clink echoed from the passenger seat. A silver object rolled out, hitting the ground. Ida's eyes widened. A pair of novelty handcuffs. Sean frowned. "Not now," he muttered, picking them up. "My ex has a strange sense of humor." She took a step back. "Whatever twisted thing you're implying, I'm not implying anything," he said, rising. "But you should know, these don't have a key. Why do you have them at all? That is none of your—" And then it happened. The cuffs snapped closed tight around her wrist. Sean froze. "Did you just—" "I didn't touch it," Ida gasped. The metal clinked again, and before either of them could react, the second cuff swung inward like a pendulum and clicked around his wrist. Silence. They stared at their joined hands, two polished metal bracelets binding their skin. Ida felt her pulse in her throat. "Take it off. I told you," he said through clenched teeth. "There is no key. This is your fault. How you assaulted my car. You canceled my future." He took a breath, jaw flexing. "We're not doing this here." He nodded at their hands, now tethered together. "We need to move. Now. I'm not going anywhere with you." "Unfortunately," Sean said, tugging lightly, "you already are." Their eyes locked hers, burning with fury, his simmering with frustration. And beneath it all, something neither wanted to acknowledge, a spark, sharp and electric, humming between their skin like a dangerous promise. At that moment, a gust of warm California wind swept through the garage, swirling her curls and rustling his suit jacket. For a brief second, they stood still, bound breathless, suspended in a tension that felt terrifyingly alive. Ida swallowed hard. "I hate this. I hate it more," Sean replied. But neither of them let go, and neither of them noticed the way their hearts beat faster perfectly, infuriatingly in sync. Sean checked his watch for the third time in a minute, jaw clamped tight as he half-dragged, half-guided Ida across the parking structure, their wrists bound together like an unfortunate magic trick he desperately wanted undone. His steps were brisk, controlled, radiating the kind of authority that made people move out of his way, except the very person attached to him. Ida kept stumbling, yanking back with small bursts of resistance that felt less like defiance and more like a refusal to surrender even an inch of herself to his pace. "Slow down," she hissed. "I'm not one of your employees." "Trust me," Sean muttered. "If you were, I'd have fired you by now." She shot him a glare sharp enough to scrape steel. "You wish." "I wish," he confirmed. But underneath the irritation, something else flickered, something dangerously close to fascination. He hated that he noticed the glow on her cheekbones when the sunlight hit just right. Hated even more that the anger in her eyes was more alive than the admiration in 1,000 boardrooms. They reached his car, still scarred from her creative vandalism, and Sean exhaled slowly, as if preparing to tolerate a hurricane. "We're already late," he said. "My client is expecting me at the Summit Hotel in—" He glanced again at his watch. 28 minutes. "Then go," she snapped. "I'll call a locksmith." With what hand he asked pointedly, raising their bound wrists. She groaned. "You're impossible." "And you're impractical," he shot back. "We don't have time for this." He opened the passenger door, guiding her in awkwardly as the handcuffs forced them to move in reluctant choreography. The moment he sat in the driver's seat, their elbows knocked. She muttered a soft curse. He pretended not to hear it, though the corner of his mouth twitched in spite of himself. She noticed. And she hated that she noticed. The drive to the hotel should have been silent, but silence could not survive two clashing storms in a confined space. The moment they hit the freeway, Ida asked, "So you ruin lives for fun? Or is it like a special hobby?" Sean gripped the wheel tighter. "I told you, I don't know anything about your scholarship yet." "Yet," she repeated. "Are you planning on caring sometime soon?" "I'm planning on not crashing this car while we're literally chained together," he answered. "Does that count?" She rolled her eyes toward the window. "Barely." For a few miles, only the soft hum of traffic filled the tension between them. But something about the quiet made their closeness feel sharper. Ida could sense the steady rise and fall of his breath, the heat of his sleeve brushing against her arm, the faint scent of his cologne, clean, expensive, maddening. Sean kept his face forward, but his thoughts drifted more than he liked. She wasn't what he expected of someone who challenged him in public. Most people who confronted him wanted attention. She wanted justice. Truth. Something he wasn't used to seeing that close. When they reached the hotel, Sean swung out of the car, and Ida was forced to follow, stumbling slightly, as the handcuffs tugged her toward him. A valet stared, startled. Sean forced a tight smile. "Don't ask." The valet wisely stepped aside. Inside the lobby, marble floors gleamed under soft lights. Everything smelled like polished wealth. Compared to it, Ida felt painfully out of place, but she lifted her chin anyway, refusing to shrink just because the world wanted her to. She didn't miss the look Sean gave her, half curiosity, half calculation, like he was trying to decode whether she belonged or whether she would shatter the illusion of perfection he lived in. He hated himself for it. Upstairs, the client, a middle-aged real estate magnate named Lawson Meyer, greeted Sean with a hearty handshake before his gaze slid to Ida. "And who is this?" Sean opened his mouth, but Ida beat him to it, lifting their cuffed hands like evidence. Associate, she said. Long story. Lawson laughed, utterly delighted. Sean, I didn't know you had a sense of humor. I don't, Sean replied flatly. This is an emergency. Sure it is. Lawson chuckled, completely unconvinced. They sat. Sean immediately launched into business projected returns, environmental impact studies, architectural renderings, each word crisp, efficient, controlled. Ida had planned to sit quietly, but as the conversation grew dry, she noticed Lawson's eyes drifting, his interest slipping. Sean didn't. He was too inside his own precision, too cold, too safe. Ida leaned back, watching the negotiation falter. Something sharp nudged her, an instinct, a boldness born from desperation and defiance. She didn't have a future to lose anymore. What was there to fear? When Lawson asked, "But tell me, Sean, why should I trust that your company sees people, not just numbers?" Sean hesitated, searching for the perfect corporate phrasing. Ida answered instead. "Because numbers don't get your hands dirty," she said softly. Both men turned to her. She swallowed but continued. "I've worked in a flower shop since I was a kid. I know what it's like to get dirt under your nails, to sweat for every dollar. Most people don't care what the world looks like, they care how it feels. And your project, it could make people feel proud of where they live. That's worth more than profit margins." Silence settled for a heartbeat, then another. Lawson leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. "That he said is exactly what I wanted to hear." He glanced at Sean, smiling. "You should let her talk more often." Sean almost choked on air. As they left the meeting with Lawson's enthusiastic handshake, sealing what had been a slipping deal, Sean walked stiffly, his jaw ticking. Ida braced herself for a scolding. Instead, he asked quietly, "How did you know what he needed to hear?" "I didn't," she admitted. "I just spoke like a human." His gaze flickered. "I do speak like a human. A very expensive robot," she corrected. "Made of marble." He stopped walking, turning toward her with that same unreadable intensity that had unsettled her in the garage. "You know nothing about me. And you know nothing about me," she shot back. "But that didn't stop you from destroying my life." Something raw passed over his expression. Guilt. No. Something close. Something he refused to name. They rode the elevator down in charged silence, her pulse echoing in the small space. At one point, their shoulders brushed, sending a bolt through her she pretended not to feel. He felt it too. She knew he did from the way his breath hitched, almost too soft to notice. When the doors opened, both stepped out too quickly. Back in the garage after 2 hours of being tethered at the wrist, their movements had grown unconsciously synchronized, annoyingly so. When he reached for the car door, she anticipated the tug. When she shifted her weight, he adjusted automatically. Neither acknowledged it, but the rhythm between them had changed. Not friendly, not gentle, but aware. As soon as they sat inside, Ida exhaled a long, frustrated breath. "Can we get these off now?" Sean shook the cuffs. "Not until I find a metal specialist or a miracle." "You're a billionaire," she muttered. "Buy one." "I'm trying," he snapped, opening his phone. But tension simmered under the surface. Less anger now, more something unresolved. Something neither wanted to look at too closely. Halfway back to campus, he spoke again, more carefully this time. "About your scholarship. I looked into it." Ida's chest tightened. "And there was a processing error," he said, eyes on the road. "A mistake. My team is correcting it." She stared at him, disbelief and hope tangling painfully in her ribs. "So what? You're just going to give it back? If you want it," he said. "I can restore everything." Her fingers curled against her jeans. "Everything." "Yes." Another beat passed. She let out a shaky laugh. Money can't buy back a dream, Sean. He looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time she saw something fragile behind the steel of his gaze. Maybe not, he whispered, but it can fix what should never have been broken. She turned away, blinking hard. You don't get it. You don't get what it feels like to spend your whole life climbing only to have the ladder pulled away by someone who doesn't even know you exist. I know you exist, he murmured almost too softly. Now. That single word sent her pulse into a chaotic flutter. She resented. She forced her voice steady. This isn't about you noticing me. Isn't it? He asked. The question hung between them like a thread stretched too thin. Ida's heart thudded, confused and angry at itself. Stop trying to fix me with your money. I'm trying to fix a mistake. Then fix your systems. Fix your people. Fix the world that lets men like you stay on top while people like me... Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. While people like me get punished for daring to dream. Sean didn't respond. Not with words. His hand still bound to hers, tightened just slightly. Not possessive. Not commanding. Just there. A quiet apology hidden in the pressure of his fingers. It startled her more than a shout would have. They pulled into the curb outside the university. Afternoon light spilled across her face as she pushed the door open. For a moment, neither moved, trapped in a rare, fragile stillness that felt too intimate for two people who insisted on hating each other. Ida, he said quietly. She paused in the doorway. I didn't mean to hurt you. She looked back at him, voice barely a whisper. But you did. Their eyes held. One breath. Two. Then the moment collapsed. Ida stepped out, breaking the connection between them. Sean remained in the driver's seat, watching her walk away, with a tightness in his chest he couldn't explain, a discomfort that felt suspiciously, dangerously like regret. And though neither admitted it, they both felt the same thing, lingering in the space where their hands had been joined. A spark they couldn't extinguish, a pull they didn't understand, and a beginning neither of them wanted. Yet both of them were already falling toward. The last place Ida wanted to be was standing in front of the glass tower of the Avalon Hotel, held hostage by a pair of stubborn handcuffs and a man whose life seemed carved from marble and privilege. Yet here she was, being tugged toward a glittering ballroom by Sean Kane, whose impatience radiated off him in cool, sharp waves. His grip on her wrist was tight, but controlled, as if he were terrified of losing control of anything. Not even the strange girl from a flower shop who had scratched his car and spoken truths he didn't want to hear. "Why am I here again?" she said under her breath. Sean didn't look at her, jaw tight. "Because my presence is required. And at the moment, you're attached to my presence. You make that sound like I'm a bad accessory." "You are," he muttered, then exhaled. "Just stay close. Don't talk to anyone. Don't wander. Don't exist," she offered. He glanced at her. Then something flickering in his gaze. Frustration, guilt, maybe even something softer, but he shut it down quickly. "Just don't cause a scene." "Funny," she said. "I was going to tell you the same thing." The ballroom overflowed with wealth sequins, crystal chandeliers, and people who smelled like old money and entitlement. Lavish floral arches lined the room, each arrangement so expensive, Ida's florist instincts made her stomach flip. She ignored the sting in her heart. Beautiful flowers always reminded her of dreams she once believed she deserved. Sean's pace slowed as they approached the center of the room. Then Ida saw her, a blonde woman in a shimmering silver gown, elegant, poised, smiling for cameras, as if she were carved for the spotlight. Her hand rested possessively on the arm of a tall businessman. Sean stiffened. Ida felt it instantly through the metal linking them. "Let me guess," she whispered. That's the ex. Emily. His voice was clipped sharp. And the man next to her is her fiancé, Robert Calder. So this is their engagement party. Yes. Then why are you even here? Because I'm a donor. And because she insisted. Ida's anger softened unexpectedly when she saw the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders tightened. You okay? Sean blinked as if the question startled him. Why wouldn't I be? But she could tell the past pressed on him harder than he let on. The moment Emily spotted him, her face lit with a glow that felt a little too intentional. She glided toward them, like a queen descending her staircase. Sean, she breathed, and her gaze slid to Ida, lingering with thinly veiled disdain. And, friend. Not a friend, Ida said at the same moment Sean said, not exactly. Emily's smile sharpened. Well, this is a surprise. Before Sean could respond, a cluster of paparazzi swarmed cameras flashing like small lightning strikes. In one swift motion, Sean's free hand moved to shield Ida's face, pulling her in closer, a protective instinct he didn't seem aware of. Someone shouted, Sean, who's the woman? Is she your date? Are you two together? Emily's eyes widened in something between panic and fury. Sean, she hissed, they're photographing you holding hands with her. Sean looked down. Their cuffed wrists gleamed under the chandelier, two metal rings locking two very different worlds together. The photos snapped relentlessly. Ida tried to pull back, but Sean held her firmly, a silent, don't move, passing between them. She felt heat flood her cheeks, not entirely from embarrassment. There was something startling about the way he held her, protective and possessive, in a way he probably didn't intend. Emily tried to intervene, stepping forward. Actually, Sean is... But it was too late. The cameras had what they needed. By the time security dispersed them, the damage was done. Ida barely had a second to breathe before Sean tugged her toward a quiet hallway near the terrace. Great, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. This is exactly the disaster I didn't need. You think I did this on purpose? Ida snapped. I didn't ask to be dragged to your ex's engagement party like some human shield. He turned sharply toward her, frustration storming in his eyes. You were never meant to be in those photos. Then why didn't you let go? The room went still, the air tightening between them. Sean's voice lowered. Because they would have shown your face. So he said quietly, you don't deserve the chaos that comes with being attached to me. For a moment, neither spoke. Something softened in her chest. Something dangerous. Then his phone buzzed. Loud. Urgent. He answered instantly, turning slightly away from her. Yes, I saw the photos. A pause. I don't care what Emily thinks. Just tell me how bad it is. Another pause. His entire posture stiffened. Trending already. Ida's stomach twisted. This was bad. Very bad. When he hung up, his expression wasn't angry. It was calculating, as if he were assembling a puzzle at lightning speed. It's everywhere, he said. Every news outlet. Every blog. They're saying I brought a mystery woman to my ex's engagement party. Half the comments think I sabotaged the event. The other half think you're my fiancé. You're what? Ida nearly choked. That's insane. Yes, he said, but unfortunately perception becomes reality in my world. She shook her head. I don't belong in your world. I know. He scrubbed a hand across his face. Which is why we need to control this before it explodes. Define control. He looked at her then fully, intensely, like he was weighing her soul against the consequences of his life. You're not going to like this. I haven't liked anything today. Fair. He exhaled. I need you to pretend to be my fiancé. The words landed like a shockwave. For a heartbeat, she thought she misheard him. What? Just for a short period, he clarified. 2 months. Enough time for my team to clean up the narrative and convince investors that my personal life isn't spiraling. And what makes you think I would ever agree to something so insane? Because I'll fund your entire education in Italy, he said softly. Full tuition, living expenses, everything. Her breath caught. Hope and anger collided violently inside her. That's not fair, she whispered. It's a choice, he said. Your dream or my reputation. Both of us get something. Both of us lose something. She stared at him, trying to see the man behind the offer. His expression was unreadable, steady, controlled, but there was something underneath it. A quiet sincerity, a vulnerability he didn't show anyone else. This is a transaction to you, she said. No, Sean said, stepping closer, voice softer. This is survival. For both of us. She swallowed hard. You're asking me to lie to the world? Yes. To your ex? Yes. To myself. His jaw tightened. Only if you let it feel real. The air shifted heavy electric. She hated how her pulse responded, how her chest fluttered with something she refused to name. And when it's over, she asked, We go back to our separate lives, he said. You get Italy. I get stability. No strings. But as he said it, she caught the faintest flicker in his eyes, like he was lying to himself more than to her. For a long moment, Ida said nothing. She weighed the offer, the risk, the future she thought she'd lost, the humiliation she would have to swallow. The man standing before her, beautiful and infuriating, who held out her dream as if it were something fragile and precious. Her heart warred with her pride. In the end, neither one necessity did. 2 months, she said. His exhale was slow, almost relieved. 2 months. And I'm not playing some docile doll for you. I'd never ask you to. And no kissing unless absolutely necessary. He almost smiled. Define necessary. Don't push me, she warned. I wouldn't dream of it, he murmured. Their hands, still cuffed, shifted slightly, metal brushing against skin. The electric current surged again, impossible to ignore. Fine, she said quietly. I'll do it. Sean nodded, but something warm flickered across his features, something dangerously close to gratitude. Thank you, Ida. She forced herself to look away. Don't thank me, she said. This isn't love. Sean's voice dipped lower. No, he agreed. But it might be the most important lie we ever tell. And with that, the contract engagement, fragile, volatile, and already too charged, began. Living together was supposed to be an act, a mutual performance polished enough to convince the world, but distant enough to keep their real lives untouched. That was the rule. That was the safety line. But safety lines blur when two people breathe the same air every morning, argue over coffee, strength walk in the same rhythm down the hallway, sleep under the same roof, and slowly, quietly, uncontrollably, begin to study each other in ways neither meant to. For Sean, it started with the office. He had noticed it, how Ida subtly stiffened whenever she stepped into his old glass-walled conference room, how her fingers fidgeted with invisible threads when the walls felt too close. He never mentioned it. He simply observed quietly the concern tucked behind his composed exterior. Weeks later, she walked in one morning and froze. His private office, normally minimalist, polished, almost clinical, had transformed. The glass walls had been replaced with sliding panels that opened outward, letting natural light spill in without trapping it. Plants softened the edges. Shelves opened instead of closing. Even the furniture shifted to allow space between pieces. It breathed. She breathed. And though he hadn't been there when she stepped inside, some part of him knew she would understand the gesture without him saying a word. When she saw him later, she only asked, "Did you do that for me?" He had shrugged, pretending to check his phone. "I needed a change." But his voice carried an undertone, gentle, unguarded, betraying the truth he wasn't ready to confess. Ida didn't push. She simply watched him for a second longer than necessary, a soft warmth unfurling in her chest. Their lives began intertwining without permission. At work, Sean discovered she had an instinct for creativity that balanced his ruthlessly analytical mind. During a high-stakes pitch for a project on the verge of collapsing, he froze, not out of fear, but out of frustration. His team had hit a wall. The design lacked soul, vision, humanity. "You're selling a structure, not a story," Ida whispered beside him, her voice steady, confident, as if she belonged in boardrooms, even though she'd lived her whole life outside them. Before he could react, she stepped forward. "People don't move into buildings," she told the room of astonished investors. "They move into possibilities. Sunlit kitchens, quiet nights, the sound of their kids running down the hallway. If you design for the math will work. But if you design for the people, the world will respond." Sean watched her, really watched her. Every word she spoke tugged at something inside him, something he'd buried long ago under layers of logic and survival. Because she wasn't faking anything. She didn't know how. And she saved the project. Investors leaned in. His team whispered excitedly. Sean didn't say a word, but when he met her eyes afterward, gratitude softened the sharpness in his face. She smiled small and shy, like she wasn't used to someone looking at her with admiration instead of doubt. He felt the seed of something dangerous sprout inside him. Outside of work, their fake engagement pulled them into rituals of intimacy neither had expected. Grocery shopping on a Sunday afternoon, arguing over which pasta sauce tasted more authentic, cooking together badly, disastrously, until laughter replaced tension. Meeting her friends. Meeting her Aunt Renee, the woman who raised her after her parents died. That day was a turning point Sean didn't see coming. They drove to a small, modest house in Inglewood, the place warm with the smell of cornbread and vanilla candles, walls filled with family photos and memories Ida rarely talked about. Aunt Renee had eyes that saw everything, every secret, every fear, every bruise on the heart. She hugged Ida tightly, then turned to Sean with a look that assessed and judged and measured him in ways the world never dared to. "So, you're the fancy man," she said, "the one dragging my baby into headlines." Ida choked a laugh. Sean bowed his head slightly. "I suppose I am." "Well," she said, "if you hurt her, I'll pray for you. But I'll still hurt you back." It was half joke, half truth. Sean nodded solemnly. Understood. Ida watched, amused, yet touched. Sean wasn't uncomfortable, surprisingly. He was humbled, grounded, as if stepping into her world made something in him settle, loosen, breathe. Later, while Aunt Renee cooked, he helped Ida set the table, their wrists brushing occasionally in the small kitchen. Every accidental touch felt strangely intentional, like fate had found a reason to keep placing their hands in each other's way. That night, as they drove home, Ida rested her head lightly against the window. "She likes you. You know," she murmured. "She threatened to stab me," he reminded her. "That's her love language." He laughed, an actual unguarded laugh, and the sound wrapped around her soft and warm. She glanced at him in the dim glow of streetlights, noting how relaxed he looked, how his usual armor had cracked open just enough for her to see something real beneath it. He caught her staring. Neither looked away. The air thickened, slow, warm, charged. Days blurred into something unfamiliar but comforting. Nights stretched into conversations about everything and nothing. Sean started noticing the little things about her, the way she hummed absent-mindedly when she was nervous, the way her eyes lit up around flowers, The way she whispered, "Wow," under her breath, whenever they passed a particularly beautiful sunset, as if she couldn't help but marvel at the world, even after it had disappointed her so many times. Ida began noticing him too, the way he ran a hand through his hair when he was overwhelmed, the way he softened whenever he spoke about his late mother, the way he grew quiet when he was thinking too deeply, as if thoughts weighed heavy on him, but he refused to put them down. They were supposed to be pretending, but the pretending slipped, softened, melted, turned into stolen glances, brush of the hand moments, laughter that lingered even when it shouldn't. Everything shifted the night of the power outage. They had planned a quiet dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta candles and music playing low. But halfway through boiling water, the lights snapped off. The entire apartment plunged into darkness. Great Ida muttered, "Did you forget to pay your $1 billion power bill?" "Very funny," Sean replied, finding a candle with surprising calm. The flame flickered, casting warm light on his face. He looked different in candlelight, less intimidating, more human, impossibly beautiful. They ended up sitting on the living room floor with half-cooked pasta and a bottle of wine, the world outside muted distant. "This feels illegal somehow," Ida joked, sipping from the bottle. "I don't break laws," Sean said. "I bend systems." She snorted. "Of course you do." Silence settled, then soft and intimate. Sean watched her, the way her curls framed her face, the way candlelight danced across her skin. Ida felt his gaze and looked back, her pulse stumbling. Something in the air shifted, the kind of shift that made the world tilt in anticipation. Sean reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered, hesitant, searching. "Ida," he whispered her name, a confession. She could have pulled away. Should have. But instead she leaned in. Their breaths mingled. The space between them thinned until it wasn't space at all. Only warmth, only want, only the feeling of falling into something neither could control. He kissed her slow at first, as if asking a silent question. Her lips answered before her mind could object. The kiss deepened, gathering urgency and tenderness in equal measure. It felt like truth, like a line crossed that they could never uncross. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, both shaken, the silence between them was loud with things they weren't ready to name. But real life has a cruel sense of timing. The next morning, Emily appeared at Kane headquarters, her presence sharp as broken glass. Ida saw her speaking to Sean, too close, too familiar. Saw the way Sean's posture tensed, the way his jaw clenched. Old wounds, old gravity, old history resurfacing like a ghost, refusing to stay buried. Ida felt her chest tighten. She hated the feeling of jealousy, raw, bitter, humiliating. Hated even more the fear that maybe she was temporary, a placeholder, a convenient lie in Sean's elaborate world. And Sean, he felt the shift too. Felt Ida withdrawing, felt her walls rising again. But his own walls rose to meet them. Fear seeped in, fear of losing control, of attachment, of repeating mistakes he had buried deep. The kiss had been real, too real. And real meant dangerous. Real meant vulnerable. That night, neither reached for the other. Neither spoke about the kiss. Neither admitted the truth pulsing beneath their skin. They lived in the same apartment, breathing the same air, navigating the same fragile, shifting intimacy, yet both suddenly terrified. Pretend had turned real, and real had started to hurt. But the lie had already become something bigger than both of them. Something alive. Something unstoppable. Something they could no longer hide from, even as it began to tear at their carefully guarded hearts. The week everything unraveled began like any other, quiet, deceptively ordinary, until one email shattered the fragile world they'd built. Sean had been in his office exhausted, but determined, reviewing the prototype plans for the new lighting installation, the one Ida had helped refine the project he'd secretly tied his pride to, because her fingerprints were on every elegant curve. Then, his director of innovation stormed in, pale, frantic, holding a tablet like it was a detonated bomb. "They released it," he said. "The competitor. The exact design." Sean grabbed the tablet. His heart dropped. There it was. His design, their design already in production overseas. Impossible. Illegal. Devastating. Who had access to the full specs he demanded? The answer cut through the room like a blade. Only your executive team and Ida Johnson. Something inside him froze, then twisted, then ignited. He didn't want to believe it, God, he didn't. But the evidence lined up with cruel precision. She had taken the prototype home. She had discussed the design outside the office. She had trusted her reckless friend. Sean's breath shortened. His chest tightened with a pressure he mistook for betrayal, not fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of having misread everything. "Bring her to me." He said the words colder than they felt inside. When Ida entered his office, she was smiling softly, timidly, still carrying the gentle warmth of the near confession they'd shared just nights earlier. But one look at his face, and her smile faltered. His expression was a storm-dark, severe trembling at the edges, as if barely contained. "Sean." "What happened? You tell me," he said, tossing a printed photo onto the desk. The competitor's product gleamed on glossy paper. Her breath caught. "They stole it. Don't pretend." His voice cracked before it hardened again. "The files were with you, with your friend. Hours later, they landed in the hands of the one man who's been trying to destroy my company for years. You think I—" She stepped back as if physically struck. "Sean, no. Just answer me," he said, but he didn't sound like himself anymore. "Did you give the design to someone? Did you leak it? Did you sell it?" "I would never." "Then why was it only your copy missing?" She opened her mouth, but no explanation came. She had trusted too easily, and now that trust was being twisted into a weapon against her. He exhaled sharply. "I trusted you. I defended you. He stopped himself, but too late. The words hung between them like smoke. "I cared about you. I lost my mind over you. And look what it cost me." But instead he said, "I should have known better." Her heart cracked. "Say what you really mean." "Fine," he snapped. "Maybe I forgot who you are. Maybe I let myself believe you were." He couldn't finish. Ida felt something inside her collapse. "Say it," she whispered. "Say whatever will make you feel less betrayed. I can't afford liars in my life." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut skin. Her throat burned. Her eyes blurred. She reached for the engagement ring, fake, but oh, how real it had begun to feel, and placed it on the corner of his desk. The sound it made hitting the surface was soft, delicate, devastating. "I'm done," she said, voice breaking but controlled. "Not because you accused me, but because you didn't even hesitate." And before he could reply, she walked out. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, swift, determined, but trembling beneath the surface. Sean didn't move. Not at first. He couldn't. All he could do was stare at the little ring glinting on his desk, like a wound he had carved into himself. Later that night, truth emerged, too late to save what he had already destroyed. Ida's friend, shaking and ashamed, confessed everything. The competitor had manipulated her, flirted just enough, convinced her to invite him inside, stolen the files without her even realizing. Sean felt the floor fall away beneath him. The guilt was suffocating. He called Ida again and again, but she didn't answer. He drove to her apartment, but her aunt said she wasn't home. He went to the flower shop, to the park they'd visited once at sunrise, to the cafe she loved. Nowhere. He had lost her, and it was his fault. Days later, he finally found her at a press conference he was holding to clear her name. Cameras flashed. Reporters murmured. His chest ached with every breath as he announced she had been innocent all along. But when Ida appeared on the sidelines, he lost all composure. He stepped off the stage, moving toward her, as if pulled by instinct. "Ida, please." She stiffened. "I need to talk to you." But her expression was steady, shielded the softness he loved gone from her eyes. "We don't have anything left to talk about." "Yes, we do. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have asked. I should have seen me," she whispered. "The real me, not the poor girl from the flower shop. Not the convenient fiancé for your image. Me. I do see you. Too late." His chest tightened painfully. "Don't say that." "Sean," she swallowed hard. "You broke something I can't fix." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. "I got it," she said, pulling an envelope from her bag. "The letter." His breath stilled. "What letter?" "The scholarship committee reinstated my application." She forced a trembling smile. "I leave for Italy next month." It felt like being punched in the lungs. "You're leaving?" "Yes. Because of me." "Because of me," she corrected gently. "I need to save myself." "Don't go." He whispered the words, slipping out before he could cage them. "Not like this. Not when there's still something between us." Between us. Her eyes shimmered. Sean, there was something. Something beautiful and terrifying. But now, she inhaled shakily. Now there's only a contract. A lie that got too close to truth. You know it wasn't a lie. "I know what it became," she said softly. "And that's why I have to walk away." "Ida." "No." Her voice cracked. "I won't let anyone hurt me like that again. Not even you." Reporters watched transfixed as the CEO of Kane Foundation, usually composed, unreadable, stood helpless before a woman he clearly loved while she turned away with tears slipping down her cheeks. Sean wanted to chase her shout, beg, promise, fall to his knees if he had to. But her posture was final. Her trembling shoulders were final. The way she didn't look back was final. And he understood, if he followed her now, he wouldn't be rescuing her. He'd be breaking her all over again. So he stayed rooted to the polished floor of his own press hall, watching the woman who changed his world walk out of it. The days that followed were hollow. Sean kept replaying every moment, every word he had thrown at her in fear and pride, every second he hadn't fought for her hard enough. He buried himself in work, but work had lost its meaning. Investors praised him for clearing his company's name. Board members applauded his crisis management. None of it mattered. Ida's absence was a ghost that followed him through every hallway, every car ride, every sleepless night. Meanwhile, Ida packed for Italy with shaking hands. She told her aunt she was happy, excited, grateful. She told her friends she was fine. But when she lay awake at night, she heard Sean's voice, the one she tried so hard to forget, echoing in the hollow places of her heart. She hated that she still loved him, hated that she still remembered the way he looked at her in candlelight, hated that part of her hoped he would come one last time, stop her at the door, say the words she needed. But he didn't come, and she didn't call, because love without trust was a wound waiting to reopen. A week before her departure, she attended her own small farewell dinner, quiet, simple, the kind of gathering she'd always dreamed of when she imagined a future beyond survival. People hugged her, wished her luck, told her she deserved everything she was about to receive. She smiled and thanked them, but just beneath her ribs, the ache burned like a slow-moving heartbreak. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse that once felt too big for one man until he let one woman into it, Sean Kane stood on his balcony, staring into the night sky, whispering her name into the wind like a prayer he knew would never reach her. They loved each other. That much had been true. But love wasn't enough. Not this time. Not with the wounds still open. So they parted, two hearts still reaching, but two worlds pulling them apart. And as the distance grew, so did the quiet certainty that this wasn't the end. But it was undeniably the breaking. The weeks after Ida's departure hollowed Sean out in a way he didn't know was possible. At first, he threw himself into work with a kind of obsession that frightened even his closest employees. His days blurred into endless meetings, calls, deadlines. Nights dissolved into quiet, trembling hours, drinking alone in that too large penthouse where every room still whispered her name. He barely slept, barely ate. He moved through the world with the precision of a machine, but without its stability. He cracked in small places he pretended not to notice. And when he finally closed his eyes at night, he saw her. The way she'd looked at him the last time they spoke, hurt, resolute, choosing herself over him. He told himself she deserved better. But that didn't stop the clawing ache, the way his heart lunged every time he imagined her boarding a plane to Italy. He tried to drown it in whiskey. That only made the ghosts louder. One night, long past midnight, Sean sat slumped on his living room floor, back against the couch, an untouched glass in his hand. His tie hung loose. His eyes were rimmed red. A storm raged outside, but inside there was only silence and the buzz of his own unraveling. He didn't hear the elevator doors open, didn't hear soft footsteps. Only when a gentle voice whispered, "Sean," did he lift his head, fighting through the fog in his mind. Ida stood by the doorway, soaked from the rain, breathing fast. She looked just as shaken as he felt. "Ida." His voice cracked. "What are you? How are you? Your aunt called me," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "She said you weren't well." He blinked hard. Shame twisted through him. He didn't want her to see him like this, broken, collapsed, reduced to a man he didn't recognize. And yet, a desperate part of him clung to the sight of her as if she were oxygen. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. She hesitated, her eyes searching his. "I thought you were hurting." "I am." His voice faltered. "Because you left." Something flickered across her face. Pain, confusion, longing. "Sean, don't. I need to fix what I broke," he said, trying to stand but failing, as the alcohol pulled him down. "I need to make things right. I need—" "Stop," she said, steadying him. "You don't have to say anything right now." He looked at her as if she were the first steady thing he'd seen in weeks. "I still love you," he whispered before he could stop himself. Her breath caught. She wasn't ready for that. Before she could respond, another voice pierced the room like a knife. "Well, isn't this adorable?" Emily stepped inside, umbrella in hand, her expression sharp with something venomous and satisfied. Ida instantly pulled away from Sean as if scalded. "Why are you here?" Ida asked, her voice bracing itself. Emily shrugged. "Sean's mother asked me to check on him. He's been spiraling." Sean flinched at the humiliation, but Emily didn't stop. She never did when there was blood in the water. "Though I suppose I should have known why. You were always his weakness." Ida stiffened, chin lifting. "I didn't come here to argue." "Good," Emily said, "because I didn't come to argue either." She turned to Sean, then to Ida, and her gaze sharpened with cruel precision. I came to tell the truth. Something he should have told you long ago. Sean's heart stopped. Emily, don't. But she smiled a brittle, vindictive smile. She deserves to know. Everyone deserves to know what your family did. Ida frowned. What are you talking about? Emily stepped closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Your parents, their deaths. The room froze. Sean's blood turned cold. Emily, please. The construction collapse that killed them, she said, locking eyes with Ida. It was Kane Industries. His father was the overseeing contractor. He cut costs, used cheaper materials, ignored safety inspections, and the building fell on your parents. Ida's breath shattered. The world tilted impossibly. No. Sean surged to his feet, reaching for her. Ida, wait, let me explain. Explain, she whispered, voice trembling. Explain how your family destroyed mine. My father. Your father killed my parents. The words tore out of her raw and disbelieving. You knew all this time. I didn't at first. Sean said, his voice shaking. I only found out recently after you left, when my dad finally confessed. I wanted to tell you God, Ida. I tried, but I was terrified. I didn't want to hurt you again. So you chose to lie, she said, each word sharp with betrayal. You lied by omission. I was trying to protect you. No, she whispered, stepping back as if he were dangerous. You were trying to protect yourself. He flinched. Hard. Because she was right. Ida looked at Emily, then the woman standing like a victorious specter. Why tell me now? Because you deserve the truth, Emily said, though her voice was anything but kind. And because he clearly never would have told you. Sean closed his eyes, pain twisting his features. Ida, please don't listen to her tone. Listen to me. My father's actions destroyed lives. I hate him for it. I cut ties with him because of it. I tried. You tried nothing, she whispered, her eyes filling. You stood there and let me plan a future with you while you carried the truth like a secret poison. He felt the blow physically. I didn't want to lose you. Then you should have trusted me with the truth. Tears trembled down her cheeks. Sean stepped forward impulsively, but she stepped back just as fast. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch me. Her voice cracked like breaking glass. You were supposed to be the one person who didn't hurt me, but somehow, you hurt me more than anyone ever has. Ida, he said, reaching for her again, voice hoarse, desperate. I love you. She shook her head, sobs catching in her throat. Love without honesty isn't love. Those words sliced through him deeper than any blade. He felt himself unraveling again, reaching for something already out of reach. Please don't leave like this, he begged. Let me fix it. Let me make it right. You can't fix my past, she whispered. And you can't fix what you broke inside me. She turned away, gathering her bag with trembling hands. We're done, Sean. The finality in her voice hit him like a car crash. She didn't look back, not even once. When the door closed behind her, Sean's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, hands clutching his hair, breath shaking uncontrollably. A sound escaped him, raw, broken, unrecognizable, the kind of sound a man makes when something essential is ripped from him. Emily stepped toward him, but the look he shot her was cold, lethal. Get out. For the first time, she listened. Once she was gone, the apartment fell silent again, except for the storm outside and the storm inside him. He stayed on the floor long after his tears dried, long after the whiskey lost its burn, long after the truth settled like ash over everything he still loved. Somewhere across the city, Ida collapsed into her aunt's arms, sobbing like the child she once was, alone, terrified, heartbroken. The truth had torn open every old wound she thought she'd healed. And now Sean, her Sean, was entwined in the darkest night of her life. For the first time since she met him, she wished she'd never met him at all. And for the first time since he met her, Sean understood that loving her wasn't enough, because the truth had made them strangers again. Strangers standing on opposite sides of a grief neither of them could undo. Their love, once fragile but hopeful, shattered completely that night. And both of them knew, this time, the breakup wasn't from pride or fear. It was from pain. And pain, more than anything else, is what makes people walk away for real. 5 years passed, with the quiet, relentless speed of tides, reshaping everything Ida and Sean used to be. Ida returned from Italy with more than a degree. She returned with a name that echoed across design magazines and modern architecture circles: Ida Johnson, the visionary mind behind the Sky Breach series, the young architect who blended geometry with soul steel with humanity. She built homes that healed, buildings that breathed, spaces that held sunlight the way people held memories. But the greatest secret she built quietly, fiercely, with trembling hands and a full heart, was the small life now holding her leg in a busy cafe, tugging at her coat, giggling with 2 front teeth missing. Kira, her daughter, their daughter, with curls as wild as Ida's and eyes a perfect mirror of Sean's sharp crystal blue that saw everything even when she didn't understand it. Kira was 4, stubborn, brilliant, sensitive, and endlessly curious. She was the brightest corner of Ida's life, the reason she woke up with a purpose more profound than any architectural award could ever offer. Ida had never told Sean. She had intended to, but after the revelation about her parents, after watching him collapse under guilt and heartbreak, after learning months later that he had been diagnosed with a brain tumor that required immediate surgery, she knew she could not burden him with the truth. She told herself it was mercy. She told herself it was protection. She told herself she didn't want her daughter to grow up in shadows cast by old pain. And when the news channels reported that Sean had survived, but with partial memory loss, entire years, blurred names, missing faces, smeared into fog, she understood that even fate was insisting on silence. So she moved forward. Alone, but not lonely. Not anymore. Sean's return to the public eye happened slowly, quietly, almost humbly. The man who once walked like he owned every room now moved with a gentler presence, a softer focus, as if searching constantly for something he had lost in the fog. His memories before the surgery were intact. His memories after Ida left were fractured. Her face appeared in flashes, an echo of a smile, a shadow in a doorway, a voice he couldn't place. Whenever he tried to grasp those images, pain lanced across his temples like a warning. So he let them go. Or he tried to. He rebuilt his life, disciplined and steady, returning to work with a calmer, wiser version of himself. People whispered that the surgery had changed him, made him warmer, more introspective, less consumed by power. He didn't deny it. He didn't deny anything anymore, except perhaps the ache that lived in his chest, an ache he couldn't explain, a missing piece he didn't know the shape of. Fate reunited them on an afternoon like any other, which made it feel like destiny was playing a cruel, intimate trick. Kira had escaped her Aunt Renee's careful hold at the community playground and ran full speed toward the giant koi pond, fearless in the worst way children could be. Ida chased her, breathless, yelling her name, but another pair of hands reached the little girl first. Strong hands. Familiar hands. Sean lifted Kira into the air in one swift motion, saving her from tumbling into the shallow water. "Hey there," he murmured, steadying her. That was a brave run. Dangerous but brave. Kira blinked at him, her curls bouncing, her blue eyes widening with instant fascination. "You sound like me," she said seriously. "No," Sean laughed softly. "I think you sound like me." And something in him, some invisible thread, pulled taut and hummed. He didn't know why. He only knew he felt connected, as if the child in his arms belonged to some chapter of him he had forgotten. When Ida finally caught up, breathless and flushed, Sean turned at the sound of her voice and froze. Not with recognition, not fully, but with a stunned, visceral pull that shocked him to the bone. "Ida." He whispered the name, falling from his lips like instinct. Her heart stopped. She hadn't planned for this. She hadn't prepared. Seeing him alive, healthy, breathtaking as ever, only softer, warmer, was like being hit with the memory of a wound she had taught herself to live with. "Sean," she managed, steadying Kira's hair, forcing her heartbeat to calm. "It's been a long time." 5 years, he said before he could stop himself. She swallowed. "Yes." He looked at her with a strange mix of familiarity and confusion, as if she were a dream he had woken from too quickly. "You look different," he said softly. "Good different." "You too," she replied, her voice quieter. Kira tugged at her coat. "Mommy, this man saved me," and Sean's world tilted. "Mommy, a child who looked like—" His breath faltered. "She's yours." Ida nodded, her hand instinctively covering Kira's shoulder. "Yes, she's mine." Something inside him ached, something deep, something he didn't yet understand. Their next encounters were accidental at first, meetings at the same parks, the same cafes, the same architectural exhibitions. Too many coincidences to be coincidences at all. Kira liked Sean. Too much. She clung to him with the ease of a child who recognized something familiar, something safe, something hers without knowing why. And Sean, in spite of himself, looked forward to the moments he crossed paths with them. He found himself watching for a tiny figure with bright eyes and a laugh that felt like spring. Found himself watching Ida, even more fascinated by how she had changed, stronger, brighter, breathtaking, in ways he had never allowed himself to fully see before. Every time she smiled politely at him, something inside him shifted. Every time she avoided looking too long in his eyes, he wondered what history his mind had forgotten, but his heart remembered. There were awkward moments, him offering to walk them to their car, her refusing too quickly, him asking about Kira's father, her dodging with a trembling jaw, him showing up to one of Kira's school presentations by accident and sitting beside Ida, their knees brushing her breath, stalling. There were sweet moments, Kira falling asleep in his lap during a community movie night, Ida fixing Sean's tie before a panel discussion and pulling back too late, Sean silently holding an umbrella over them in the rain, letting himself get soaked because feeling her close again brought a warmth no shelter could replicate. And there were jealous moments, Sean bristling when he saw a coworker flirting with Ida outside her studio, Ida burning with irritation when a model leaned into Sean at a gala. They weren't together. They weren't anything. They were everything they used to be, just buried under confusion, longing, and a truth waiting to detonate. The breakthrough came one evening in Ida's studio, when Sean arrived to drop off Kira's forgotten backpack. The studio lights glowed soft amber sketches scattered across the desk like pieces of her heart. Kira slept on a couch nearby, curled under a blanket. Sean paused at the doorway, watching them, this tiny scene of domesticity, of quiet life, of love he didn't know he'd once had. Something in his chest tightened painfully. "Ida," he said softly, "can we talk?" She didn't look up from her drafting table. We shouldn't. I think we should. Sean. Please. She finally turned, and the moment their eyes met, the world tilted. Memories flickered in Sean's mind, flashes half-formed chaotic. A woman laughing in candlelight. A hand in his. A whispered promise. A kiss. I know you, he breathed, more than you think. Her heart twisted. Your memory. Pieces, he said, touching his temple. Fragments. But they're always of you. Her eyes burned. Sean, don't do this. Do what make me remember us. He stepped closer, helplessly drawn to her. Ida, I think I never stopped loving you. She shook her head, tears gathering. You don't even remember why we ended. Then tell me. I can't. Why? Because it will break you all over again. She turned away, chest shaking. And I can't watch you fall apart a second time. His breath faltered. What are you protecting you? She whispered. And then Kira stirred in her sleep. Sean's eyes softened, instantly drawn to her with a pull that felt instinctive. She looks like me, he said. The room froze. Ida's heart stopped. He stepped closer, voice trembling. She has my eyes. Lots of people. No, he whispered, understanding crashing through him like a tidal wave. He looked up at her, breathless, pale. Ida, is she? Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could control them. And that was his answer. His legs nearly gave out. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. My daughter, he breathed, barely audible. She's my daughter, Ida sobbed, silently nodding. Sean pressed a hand to his chest, as if trying to keep himself from splitting open. He looked at Kira again, his child. His blood, 4 years stolen from him by tragedy, by secrets, by the monstrous truth of their past. His voice broke on a whisper. I missed everything. Ida stepped forward, reaching instinctively before pulling her hand back. Sean, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. You were sick. You were recovering. You had lost so much already. I lost her, he said, eyes wet. I lost my little girl. You didn't know. I should have known. He choked. I should have been there from the beginning. It wasn't your fault. It feels like my fault. He wiped his face, trembling. God, she's mine. Something fragile and fierce lit inside him. Love, grief, awe, terror. Can I? He whispered. Can I hold her? Ida nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Sean approached the sleeping child with hands shaking like he was touching a miracle. He lifted her gently. She stirred, blinked, then curled into his chest instinctively, as if her body recognized him long before her mind could. Sean broke, completely. He held her to his heart, tears falling into her curls. Hi, sweetheart, he whispered, voice quivering with love and devastation. Daddy's here. Ida covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. Because in that moment, she knew 2 impossible truths. Sean had fallen in love with her again, without memory. And now he had fallen in love with Kira instantly, completely, irrevocably. And nothing would ever be the same again. The truth unraveled slowly like a thread, tugged loose from a tapestry too carefully woven to fall apart all at once. After the night, Sean learned Kira was his daughter. Everything in his world shifted, not violently, but with the soft, heavy force of inevitability. He spent days in a haze of awe and grief, torn between the impossible joy of fatherhood and the crushing regret of the years he'd missed. Yet even as he clung to the sweetness of every moment he shared with Kira, her small hand gripping his thumb, her laughter lighting every dark corner of his memory, There was still one shadow he couldn't escape: Emily. Her lies, her manipulation, her need to control the narrative of his life. He sensed she wasn't done, and he was right. The storm came in the form of a leaked article. Anonymous vicious claiming Kira wasn't his, that Ida was using him for money, that their rekindled closeness was nothing but a calculated trap. The article spread fast, fueled by old rumors and new malice. Sean confronted Emily, his voice low and deadly, every emotion he'd suppressed for years, finally cracking through. At first, she lied. Then she tried to twist the truth. But the evidence messages she'd sent to journalists, documents she'd forged, attempts to sabotage Ida's projects, destroyed whatever fragile toxic hold she still hoped to have. When the truth cornered her, she broke into a bitter tirade, spitting out the jealousy she'd nursed since the day she realized Sean had loved someone else more deeply than he'd ever loved her. "She ruined you," Emily hissed. "She made you weak." But Sean didn't flinch. "She made me human," he said, "and you never understood what that meant." With a final coldness he rarely allowed himself, he ended the last thread of their past and walked away. When he returned to Ida, she was packing her things again, because the article had shaken her more deeply than she wanted to admit. "This is why I kept Kira hidden," she whispered when she saw him. "This world of yours, it destroys everything it touches." "Not this time," he said, breathless and determined. "Not us." He told her everything, every lie exposed, every trap unraveled, every wound he now saw with painful clarity. She listened, her spine stiff, her heart trembling. "Sean, even without Emily, there's still our past. There's still what your father did." He stepped closer, not touching her yet, but close enough that she could feel the weight of his sincerity. "I can't change what he did," he said quietly, "but I can choose who I become because of it. And I choose to spend the rest of my life making sure nothing ever hurts you or our daughter again." Her eyes filled, but she shook her head, fighting the hope that terrified her. "Love isn't enough," she whispered. "It never was." "Then let me prove," he said, voice trembling, "that it can be if I spend every day earning it." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. It wasn't instant. They argued, they cried, they pulled apart and collided again. But something had changed. Something realigned between them, like two celestial bodies finally settling into their rightful orbit. Sean began joining Ida and Kira for dinners, for school mornings, for quiet walks along the Venice canals. At first, he kept a careful distance, afraid of overwhelming them. But Kira never allowed distance for long. She climbed into his lap during story time, tugged his sleeve during grocery trips, slept on his chest during movie nights. Ida watched them, her heart mending and breaking all at once. Slowly, Sean rebuilt the trust she had guarded so fiercely. He showed up every time. He apologized every time it mattered. He listened, not defensively, not out of guilt, but because he needed to understand her pain in order to love her completely. And she, in return, let him back into the small spaces of her life, her studio, her kitchen, her quiet midnight thoughts. The final turning point came unexpectedly on a warm spring evening at the Santa Monica Pier. Kira convinced them to ride the Ferris wheel, a small miracle, given Ida's fear of enclosed spaces and Sean's lingering vertigo from the surgery. But they went anyway, squeezed together in one gondola, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and popcorn. Halfway up, Kira fell asleep again. She had napped in cars, trains, studios, restaurants, as if her little body instinctively knew when the world needed a pause. Sean watched her for a long moment, brushing a curl from her forehead, with the tenderness of a man who no longer questioned his right to care. Then he looked at Ida. They were suspended in the sky with the city glowing beneath them, and she felt his gaze before she met it. Slowly he reached into his coat pocket. Her breath stopped. When he knelt inside that tiny gondola, waves crashing far below, her entire world stilled. He held her hand, eyes bright with unshed tears, voice raw with the weight of a love that had survived too many storms. "I don't remember everything we were," he whispered, "but I know what we are now. And I know what I want us to be for the rest of our lives. Ada, I have loved you in every version of myself before memory after memory, and in every space between. You are the only truth that stayed. Marry me, please." Her heart broke open. All the fear, all the pain, all the longing she had carried collapsed under the force of his sincerity. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Sean," she breathed, trying to steady herself. "You hurt me." "I know," he whispered. "And I will spend my life loving you in all the ways that heal what I broke." She covered her mouth, sobbing softly. "I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But I'd rather face every fear with you than live one more day without you." Kira stirred, mumbling sleepily, and curled closer into Sean's side, bridging them, anchoring them, completing them. Ada looked at her daughter, at the man kneeling before her, at the life she had built alone, and the life she could build again this time, not in fear, but in love. "Yes," she whispered through tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Their wedding was small, intimate, breathtaking. Ada walked down an aisle of pale roses and soft music, her gown simple but glowing, her curls crowned with tiny white blossoms. Sean waited at the altar, eyes fixed on her the way a man looks when he knows he is witnessing the miracle he once lost. And little Kira, radiant in a tiny white dress, pranced ahead of them, scattering petals with more enthusiasm than precision, earning laughter from every guest. When Sean and Ida exchanged vows, it felt less like a ceremony and more like an unspoken promise, finally being spoken aloud, two wounded hearts, choosing each other with full clarity, full vulnerability, full devotion. Their kiss sealed not just a marriage, but a redemption. 1 year later, Ida gave birth to their second child, a baby boy with Sean's calm eyes and Ida's warm smile. They named him Luca. He fit into their lives as if he had always been waiting just beyond the horizon. On a golden evening, the four of them stood together on the beach at Santa Monica, waves lapping gently at their feet, the sky blazing with color, violet, rose, gold, like the world itself was blessing their happiness. Kira held Sean's hand, while little Luca slept against Ida's chest, and Sean wrapped an arm around his wife, pulling her close, as the sun dipped into the ocean. Ida leaned into him, her heart full, her fears quiet at last. "We made it," she whispered. "We did," he murmured, kissing the top of her head. "And I'd choose this life with you 1,000 times." She smiled, feeling the slow, deep certainty of their love settle into her bones. "Me too." They stood there until the sky turned dark, their shadows long and intertwined on the sand. A family crafted not from perfection, but from resilience, forgiveness, and love. So fierce it rebuilt everything that had ever been broken. The end.